Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Welcome back to another episode of Peak Performers Podcast. Today in studio, or actually in his studio, I'm in my studio, we have Michael Zipursky. He's an entrepreneur, he is an author, and the CEO of consultingsuccess.com. He's consulted with organizations around the world, from service providers to multi-billion-dollar multinational corporations, including Panasonic, Dow Jones, Financial Times, and Royal Bank. He's the author of 5 books, and most recently, his new book is The Elite Consulting Mind. Michael, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, real pleasure to be with you.
Man, I have been looking forward to this because in your bio, man, you are the expert when it comes to consultants. You help consultants make more money. So this is like a free lesson for me. We're just going to sit here. I'm just going to take notes while you give us a brain download of what are most consultants missing?
Well, they're missing. Depends on what stage they're at, right? You're going to have different challenges as you grow. In the early stages, the most common thing that people are missing is clarity around who their ideal client really is, and then developing a message that will get the attention and interest of that ideal client, a message that will resonate with them, that will have them raising their hand, wanting to have a conversation with you. That's the early stages. As time goes on, what a lot of consultants still struggle against is they may have reached a place in their business where they've received quite a few referrals from their network, or other sources, connections, and so forth, and their business has kind of coasted along. But at some point, they realize that those referrals are starting to dry up. They're not getting as much business as they used to through that method, and so now they have to start marketing, but they don't know how to market. They don't know how to actually go out and effectively promote and sell themselves and their services. And so that is probably the second biggest area, is lack of a clear plan around their marketing.
All right, so let's start with number one, because I want to make sure we don't skip too far so the audience can kind of start from. Because what happens is so often we want to find out what the end answer is or the last piece, and then we don't start at the beginning, and then the pie doesn't get made correctly. So understanding who that ideal client is so important. And, and I think back of our consulting firm, when we started, we all started in the same place, right? No clients. So then you have an idea of who is your client going to be. And of course, naturally, or I should say, this is what we did, is I wanted to find people that were like me. I figured that would be the best connection. There'd be rapport there. I could certainly relate to what they were going through. So I was looking for people just like me. And it's interesting how things start to morph as you bring on clients. You find out where you're a good fit and where you're not a good fit. What do you tell consultants that are in the early stages where they really don't know what the ideal client is because they don't have enough to actually tell?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And the first thing is that most people tend to cast their net too wide. They want to be all things to all people. Most of the consultants that we work with have a great deal of experience and expertise. They have a track record in the corporate world or in their consulting business, and there's a lot that they can bring to the table. So the first question for people to ask is, how can I really help? What is the real problem that people are having that I can add value to and that I can be exceptional at? And when you start to think about that, and then you look at other criteria, like where is there real potential in the market, where is there opportunity, then you can start to eliminate a lot of options that you might otherwise consider. You might say, well, I can help people with management. Okay, but so can everyone else. So, beyond that, what specific experience and expertise do you have? Have you created a certain level of, let's say, higher level results, more breakthroughs for people, whether it's a past employer or a client, vendor, whatever it might be, that you can say, well, maybe I can do that for others. So when you get really clear on that and you find where your true core unique ability, that sweet spot is, then you want to match that to a problem that the market is having, right? So oftentimes someone will say, oh, I'm very good at this. They go to the marketplace isn't wanting to buy that. That's not what they're dealing with. So you have to make sure that the market actually wants to buy, that they have a problem or they want a result that you can add value to, that you can create results for them, and then match that to where you can actually do that.
Yeah, it's not just a question of where you can help, but where can you help and what does the market actually want? They could be two different things.
If you think about it, there's a lot of people out there who, the world is littered with inventions, right? Great ideas, but the problem is no one wants to buy them. And so they're just scattered and they're in the graveyards. A great step that people can take is to test your hypothesis, right? Come up with an outline of what you think you can do best. Reach out to people who you think would buy that. Have a conversation and validate. Is this something that would work? If it is, great. How can I make it better? If it's not, why not? What else would you like? What are you looking for? Where do you need help? Where, can I possibly add value? Or who have you worked with before? And then from there, you can gather a lot of intelligence that, if used properly and put into the right kind of plan, can really catapult you forward much faster.
And what you mentioned there as well, what I want to point out is ask them what they think. Have a conversation. That's not send them an email and say, hey, what do you think about this? Have a conversation, pick up the phone, meet with them in person, have a cup of coffee, and dive deep. Because, people get to the point where I've seen this so often. It's like, hey, are you interested in an app that does this, this, and this? And people are like, sure. Mm-hmm. But then when you really dive into it, what's the need here? Is this something that you'd actually invest in? Oh, well, no, it'd be kind of cool to have, but no, I'm not going to spend my money to actually get it. So have that conversation and go deep. It's you reminded me of something that a mentor taught me years and years ago, and that is that if you want to be rich, you better be in a niche. There's a reason that they rhyme. One of the things that we found when we were really figuring out and really honing what our ideal client was, everyone asks, what's the industry? What industry are you in? Or, and what we found with our clients specifically, one thing that they have or do, and the other thing is what they don't do. And for us, our niche is, we found out that 75% of our clients earn $1 million or more a year. Not their businesses don't generate that. That's their take-home salary, or dividends, obviously, from the company.
Sure.
It was kind of interesting because we're like, what do all our clients have in common? We started going through things like, it was like right there. As soon as we started analyzing it, it's like, wow, this is something that we ought to pay attention to. And the other one was, we started to look at some of the clients where we were not as successful. And we wanted to understand, why weren't we being successful with those clients? And it was so interesting because every single one had one thing in common. They were interested in getting results. They weren't committed. And they were highly fragmented, or ADD, right? They were all over the place. Very difficult. I mean, you and I are having a conversation. The phones aren't ringing. The dogs aren't running in the background. The kids aren't running around. We're focused and we're present for each other right now. And every client that we were not successful with, we saw this same trend, that they were just scattered. Every single moment of their life, there was always something going on. They couldn't focus.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I mean, failure teaches us a lot of lessons, and success leaves clues. It's really about paying attention to all of these things that we're encountering, both the things that are working and the things that aren't working, because we can then really get clear. We can eliminate those that aren't, which means we're moving closer to what is working. And oftentimes when people are starting, if we're talking about, clients and ideal client clarity, you might not start off with a lot of clarity, but as you work through these types of conversations and you ask really good questions, you're going to arrive at much greater clarity. And there are ways to, get there faster. But certainly what you're sharing, I think, is very important, because it really is about looking at what is best and what isn't working, and eliminating and getting much clearer, much more focused.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go to point number 2. And I was just having a conversation with a client not more than about 2 hours ago, and we were talking about referrals. And he was given a statistic about, they did a study at Harvard, and they were saying, what was making these particular graduates, 10 years after they graduated, the most successful? Was it the courses that they took at Harvard? Was it their GPA? Was it their test score? And the third answer was their warm relationships. And of course, we know what the answer is. It's about relationships.
Sure.
From those relationships, referrals come from. What's the key to keeping the referral chain working?
Well, there's a few factors that are very important. Number one is making sure that you're consistent, right, with strengthening and cultivating those relationships. If you just speak with someone once but never go back, you never follow up, you never find ways to add value, which is really the second, then you're not going to receive many referrals. So number one is making sure that you're always in touch with people, you stay in touch and you're consistent with that. The second is making sure that you add value, right? I mean, people like to reciprocate. If you provide value to someone, they're going to be much more likely to want to provide you with some value back, even if you don't ask for something. And then the third component is making sure that you actually really do have a good product or service that you can really deliver results. Because if you can't, no one's going to refer you business. But if you can really move the needle for someone or an organization, then they're going to be naturally more willing to talk about you, to say, you know what? Oh, actually, I have someone who can help you with that specific area. They've done a really great job for us. And the fourth area that I would say is to be specific. If you're looking to get more referrals, or if you want to receive more introductions, don't make the other party that you're speaking with or asking the referral or the introduction for, don't make them do all the work, right? Don't just say, hey, do you know anyone that maybe I could work with or that you could connect me with? That then puts all of the onus on them. Instead, if you can be much more specific and say, listen, we've done a really great job, and I've very much enjoyed working together with you on this project. The results we've seen have been these. I'd love to be able to help someone else in this industry, in pharmaceutical or whatever, who is at a senior level position in the US or in Belgium or whatever it is. Do you know of anyone? Right? The more specific, the more that you can narrow in on the criteria of who you're looking for and who you'd like to be connected with, the easier it is for that person you're speaking to actually refer you to that person.
It's interesting what you said, making notes as you're speaking. And I love the fact that you said, it's consistent and you're cultivating. It's either a relationship is either growing or dying, and it takes time, it takes energy, and you've got to add value. And when you were talking about the value, I was just thinking, it's not always just business value that you're providing, but also just personal value. How are you adding value to that relationship? How are you adding value to that individual? A good friend of mine is actually had met a very wealthy and successful billionaire from the UK. And the way they became friends is that his daughter needed some help with something, and she knew someone and knew someone. Mm-hmm. Bottom line is, it had nothing to do with business.
Sure.
But it had to do about how can you add value to their life. And find any way you can. I'm always about trying to figure out how to connect people. So
definitely. Yeah, people do business with people that they like, right? It's very uncommon to win business from someone that just doesn't like you. I mean, like they're going to go out of their way to try and make that not happen, not to encourage it to happen. And I think that these days, there are a lot of people out there who have a short-term mindset when it comes to business. They're very focused on what you might call transactional relationships, where it's just about selling and getting a deal done. But if you're really, if you really wanted to achieve long-term success, you have to have a long-term mindset. You have to be willing to invest with that relationship capital, to deposit it into that relationship bank, and not take a deposit right away. Right? You're depositing in, but I should say not take a withdrawal right away, because that builds up. And the more that you do that, the more focused you are on adding value, the more that your business will actually succeed. And this is especially important if you are in the type of business where you're selling to more established organizations. If you're selling to consumers, you can, for a time, get away with just focusing on a transaction, right? You make a quick sale online, you do an upsell, whatever it might be. But if you're selling, a $50,000, $100,000, $1 million type of consulting engagement, then you really want to be focused on establishing a relationship, strengthening it, cultivating it, add value, because that's going to make this whole sales process much easier.
Yeah, I see a lot of entrepreneurs, what I call the Tinder approach to business. It's like, swipe left, swipe right. It's like, just keep swiping right and just see what sticks. It's pervasive. And
I haven't used the app. My wife wouldn't like that too much, but I have seen others use it, and I've seen fingers swiping a lot. I can tell you that.
Right. It's just like, who's next? It's all transactional. Hey, Definitely. What's going on tonight? Forget about tomorrow night. What's going on tonight? It's about forming a relationship. I think our parents probably had it a lot better, where they actually courted. They actually went out on dates. They get to know each other, and that's the way it is in business as well. you want to understand who you're going to business with.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I certainly see that as well. I think there's a lot of people who focus too much on technology these days and not enough on relationships.
Yeah.
Many people hide behind their email or their social media. And the idea of picking up the phone or going to meet people in person through a networking event seems like it's a lot of work. Well, here's the thing. If you want to really be successful, it does take work. There's ways to shortcut it. There's ways to get results faster. But I mean, if you're in a business where you're going to interact with people, you should actually enjoy the opportunity to speak with them, to learn from them, to ask questions directly, instead of just hitting your keyboard or your phone and hoping that somehow a deal lands into your lap.
Yeah. And actually take the time to actually connect versus just touch base. You know, I see so often at networking events, it's like, hey, hi, I'm Joe. Hi, nice to meet you. Hi, I'm Joe. Nice to meet you. It's like, settle, let's have a conversation. Let's connect. Let's go deep here. My audience is tired of hearing that from me. I'm just like, I'm the old guy now, right? It's like, oh, Thor, back when you were in, junior high, we took the carriage to school. Those connecting with people and having those relationships, true relationships, don't go out of style, and it doesn't change. And you're absolutely right about technology. But technology can be your friend. And certainly when we get into the marketing piece next, number 3 here, I don't even know how many of these do you have? We're only at number 3 right now. So
are we at number 3 already?
Yeah, at the marketing piece. We went through the clarity, we went through the referrals. Now we're at the marketing. You may have been going on to like 10 or 12 different things. I just decided to hold you up so we could at least get a foundation built here.
All good. Tom,
the marketing.
What do you want to explore in the marketing? What would be most helpful?
Well, look, all right. So we got the clarity, we got the referral. Now I know who I'm going after. I've been working, and I have a referral system that's working for me. I'm really connecting with my current clients. I'm working with people. I'm forming those relationships. Now I also want to expand, and I want to get into the marketing and touch people that don't know who I am.
Sure.
What is the best way in today's environment to grow your consulting business?
So my first response to that would be that there is no best way. And I know that may be unpopular because in this day and age, everyone wants to find out what is the best, what is the hottest, but there's a lot of variables. For some people, it can be that identifying really great speaking engagements is the way for them to fill up their pipeline. For others, it can be attending trade shows. For others, it can be writing articles and developing a lot of content. And yet for others, it can be advertising, or it can be direct outreach. So, when we work with clients, what we want to first understand is, where are they right now? What do they have set up in terms of the maturity of their business, their skill set, their goals, their budget, so on and so forth. Based on that, we can then figure out what is going to be the best way for you to reach out to ideal clients. So as an example, if someone does not like the idea of speaking, then that's probably not going to be the best way for them to go. So, you want to figure out, what are your skills? Where are your strengths? And then, of course, how can you reach the market and your ideal clients in the fastest and most efficient and effective way possible? So many people, what we find, is doing a process that we call developing a marketing engine, which is really about, number one, getting clarity around who your ideal client is. Number two, developing a message that will resonate with them. Number three, making sure that you have the right offers in place in terms of how you package, position, place value on, and price your services. And then the actual marketing engine piece itself, because you have to have that foundation first, or else there's no point just bringing leads into a business if there's a whole bunch of holes, right? The water's just going to come out. So the marketing engine itself is really about identifying the ideal client and then getting in front of them, connecting with them, and then consistently adding value into the relationship. One really good way of doing this, and it will depend on your industry, and so this may or may not be the right fit. There are other ways, but one really great way is through LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn allows you to identify people with very specific criteria. So if you want to target CEOs in the United Kingdom that work at companies that have between 200 and 1,000 employees, right? And maybe the business has only been around for X number of years, you can do that. You can be very, very specific. You can reach out to them. You can connect with those people. And then you can start to provide value to them. You can start to have a conversation. There are tools and ways to automate a lot of this process. Not so much that you're just going to spam people, because no one wants that, and you should never be doing that. But it allows you to make the whole relationship building process much more efficient. So you start off by being very, very targeted to pinpoint your ideal clients, but then you can leverage some technology to connect and build those relationships with a lot more of them much faster. And then as you start getting responses and inquiries based on those campaigns that you put out, now you're able to manually take over, suggest a phone call, engage with them one-to-one, and really spend your time with the people who are most qualified. And that's one of the ways that you can use to build a really predictable flow of leads into your business.
You know, one of the things I see so often, and we don't do a lot of work with consultants or coaches, just the way our business model's based, but I've got a lot of friends in the space, and I see this over and over again, that so often they are not charging fees that are at the level that probably they should be. Everyone seems to, compete on price, or they seem to, they don't seem to price their product properly or their service properly. How do you consult with your consultants, and how do you find the right pricing model?
Yeah, so the first is, it depends on what is your model for your business. For some people, they're going to take a model that is very low margin, and their whole goal is going to be to build out their firm with many consultants. And so if that's the approach you're taking, great, right? That's not typically where our clients focus on. Our clients are much more focused on high margin consulting businesses that either they are the independent consultant or they have a small team around them. But their real goal is to engage deeply with their ideal clients. So the big shift there is moving away from hourly fees, from daily rates, and structuring your fees so that you are packaging your service offerings and you're positioning them and you are placing value on them so that you're looking at two big factors. The first is the value and the ROI that you are providing for your clients. And you get there by really understanding their situation, by having what we call a meaningful consulting sales conversation, like really getting deep, not surface level questions, but going deep to understand, what is this really worth to you? Why is this so important? How will this impact your business? And by asking all these questions, you can start to get a very good understanding of the value, the outcome, the benefit for the buyer. And by having this conversation, the buyer also starts to see it themselves. So you don't have to say to them, hey, this is what it's worth to you. You don't have to push, and you don't have to be all salesy and position your fees that way. The buyer will actually arrive at that conclusion themselves, because you're going to ask them some really great questions. So they'll already be seeing the value. That's number one, right? Then you can connect your fees to, it's not, hey, it's $200 or $250 an hour for X number of hours to do this project. It's, well, here's the outcome. It's going to be $1 million for you in the next 12 months or the next 18 months. Based on that, here's how we would structure our fees. This is going to provide you with a 5 times return on your investment, right? That's a great return on investment. People get that. As long as they can see that clearly, that can work really well. But don't stop there. And that's actually where most people stop. Most people stop at ROI and value. And while it's a great starting point, and most people can see a really nice improvement in their fees, the other area that you want to focus on is cost of inaction, right? Really helping the buyers to understand, what happens if you don't do this? How does this impact your market share? How does this impact shareholders? How does this impact your overall sales? How does it impact morale or people leaving your organization? It can impact you in a lot of different ways. So if you help the buyer to see the overall value of the project in those two different ways, both what the ROI and the value will be for them, but also what the cost of inaction, meaning the cost for them if they stay where they are, that's how you can get really compelling value established. And then when you base your fees around that, you can earn significantly more than if you ever charge an hourly or daily rate.
Now, Michael, I know that you've worked with some very large organizations around the globe. Going in and pitching to Royal Bank, Dow Jones, very different than calling up, Bob's Plumbing.
Sure.
What's the differences? How do you break down those corporate gates in order to get into those larger clients?
Well, I mean, the first thing is that it takes more time. You have to be prepared to invest more in relationships. It's typically more difficult to just pick up the phone and reach, in this case, when I was working with Panasonic, I was building our consulting business in Japan. And so as a foreigner, for me to pick up the phone and just call, the CEO or chairman of Panasonic would be 99.99% impossible. Like it's not going to happen. So, at that time, I had to figure out a strategy that would allow us to start winning business with large, billion-dollar companies. And so that was very much based on relationships. It was about connecting with the right people who could provide us the right introductions. It was then being willing to invest into those relationships, whether it's going out for dinner, having meetings, sharing ideas, adding more value by sending, articles or things that I thought that they would appreciate. And that then led to an opportunity for them to clearly see that, hey, these guys aren't, they're not disappearing. They definitely know what they're talking about. Let's talk to them about these plans that we have or these initiatives that we're considering. So that is really, one of the big differences, that if you want to start landing enterprise clients, you can do it, but you can't do it with a short-term mindset. If you go in and just think, I'm just going to win their business right away, it's really unlikely. Yes, you can make cold calls. Yes, you can connect with these people right away, but go into it with a long-term mindset. If you pick up the phone and call Bob's Plumbing right now, if they have a specific need, there's a good chance you're going to have a meeting with them tomorrow. That's unlikely to happen with a corporate buyer, but it's not impossible. And so you do need to be willing to be direct, to identify who those people are, to then connect with them, to add value for them, to pick up the phone and give them a call, try and set a meeting. If that doesn't work out, keep going back, keep adding more value, have a good follow-up process in place. And if you work enough of those cogs at the same time, you're going to start to see that your pipeline will really fill up with a nice amount of opportunities.
And when we're talking about the larger organizations, you said, it's really important you basically got an invitation or an introduction to the key players. That seems to be the best approach to really get into the front door. Is that?
It's always the best approach, and typically it's going to be one of the most popular ways. The question is, how soon can you make that happen? If you already have a connection there, it's going to happen quickly for you. But if you don't, then you need to be prepared to put in a little bit more work to nurture that relationship, to add value into that relationship. But that being said, there are many companies out there who make their full-time gig calling up different businesses, setting appointments with them, going in, making presentations, and winning deals. But keep in mind, those deals typically aren't won at one conversation, right? So you have to go into it with that long-term mindset, with the idea of providing value. And there are ways to do that. And if you have a really good plan in place, you can start seeing results much faster. But it is different when you're selling into larger organizations or to more established organizations than if you are just selling to a consumer.
And with the larger organizations, do you find that they are trying to solve a pain that they're currently suffering, or they just have a strategic initiative that they need to execute on, and part of that process is bringing on the consultants?
So we've experienced both. Sometimes people have, I'll give you an example. One of our clients is an expert in lean for manufacturers. And they're going in and they're helping those companies typically solve a problem they have with their manufacturing line or their capacity. And so they're able to assist them. That's solving a problem. But there's also the other side to that. Solving that problem then allows them to benefit, right? To see a greater result. So the two we find actually most often go together, right? It's solving a problem creates the opportunity for greater growth or upside. But in terms of the work that we've done, it's both. There's some companies who have a strategic initiative. They know they want to launch into a new market. When we were running our business in Japan, that was what we were doing. We were helping very large organizations sell and market and promote their products and services to English-speaking countries. And so that was very much not a problem in kind of mindset. It was, here's an opportunity. Now, that may have stemmed from, listen, we have a problem. Our market share is eroding. We need to sell more. So there was probably a problem in there, right? A cost of inaction. But the way that they framed it to us and was typically more about, hey, we want help with this initiative.
So imagine that you're, standing in a stadium. You've got 50,000 consultants sitting in the stands, and you've got 2 minutes to kind of give them the final words of advice. What would you tell them?
I would tell them, first of all, get very clear on who your ideal clients are and how you can add the greatest value. What is the one thing that you can do that you are just world-class at, where you are confident that you can provide real results to people? Focus on that. Find out who those are in the marketplace that need help with that. If you get feedback that those people are not looking for that, find out what is it that they are looking for. Be ready to pivot, to adjust, and then target those people, start to connect with them, build relationships with them, nurture those relationships, focus on value, make sure that you move away from hourly fees and daily rates to structures that allow you much greater upside, like ROI positioning, ROI-based and value-based fees, as well as percentage deals are another really great opportunity for people. And then look for ways to productize your service offerings so that you can create a lot more leverage in your time and deliver your clients with great results by focusing on what you're best at. Make sure that you have a good marketing plan in place, and be prepared to put in effort and time for the long term, and you'll see real success.
Man, you can just drop the mic with that one. Love it. Michael, tell us how to get the book and how we can get in touch with you if we have any other questions.
Yeah, so most of my books you can find up on Amazon. The most recent, The Elite Consulting Mind, you can go to Amazon, you'll find it there. And of course, you can head over to consultingsuccess.com. And there's plenty of resources there for consultants, both who are new to consulting and transitioning in, as well as those who've been consulting for a while now and really want to get to the next level. And especially if you want some help with putting a marketing system in place that can help you to attract more clients consistently and structure your offerings in a way that aligns with your ideal clients, you can reach out because we can potentially help you.
Michael, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate all the help. And I really like how you're concise and just to the point, man. That last 2 minutes was awesome.
Thanks so much, Thor. I appreciate the opportunity. Take care.